stress comorbidities. I kind of divide them into psychiatric comorbidities and medical comorbidities. Both are very interesting and probably paint very complicated and interesting pictures about the relationship of these things. So, what do I mean by psychiatric comorbidities? And by that, I mean illnesses that are somehow related to each other. Take attention deficit disorder, or ADHD. If kids with ADHD have a higher rate of bipolar disorder in their parents than kids who don't have ADHD. Parents with bipolar disorder have a higher rate of ADHD in their kids than those who don't have bipolar disorder. So it's like there's some connection between these two. In recent years, there's been a big increased attention to bipolar disorder in kids, and that has a fuzzy overlap with ADHD, with a lot of complicated effort trying to divvy these things out that I wonder if they really can be divvied out or if there is not some real physiological overlap. So the other obvious overlap is between bipolar disorder and unipolar disorder, which share the state of depression. Borderline personality disorder is very likely a common comorbidity with bipolar disorder. The reason for that is not exactly clear, except that probably if you're rapidly cycling between mania and depression, your ability to view other people in a constant way as stable individuals is affected. So schizophrenia has an overlap with bipolar disorder, and although we like to define these things separate, the reality is you go to the inpatient unit at the VA and almost everybody there will have schizoaffective disorder, which is somewhere in between. Studies of this over time suggest that some people may kind of move back and forth between schizophrenia and bipolar disorder over decades. So the diagnostic entities are not as well laid out as possible. Right now, we call these comorbidities. Medical comorbidities, also very interesting. Obesity being one of them, and this is something I've been reviewing fairly recently. So much of this is medication-induced, particularly some of the new second-generation antipsychotics can cause weight gain. But then weight gain is also just part of the illness. People lose weight when they're manic, they gain weight when they're depressed, and sometimes those weight changes can be quite pronounced. This has an impact on cardiovascular health, people who are heavy, as well as diabetes. People who are heavier may be at risk for type 2 diabetes. They're also at risk for a variety of different cardiovascular problems, from heart attack to stroke. Other things that are medical comorbidities are migraine headache. It's extraordinary how many people with migraine have bipolar and the other way around, such that, and in fact, it's not just that, but it specifically seems to be people with bipolar 2 disorder. So both are brain disorders, and it's very intriguing that a set of genes or pathways could be abnormal in the brain that both affected migraine and bipolar disorder. The treatments for these two things are similar. Basically, you treat migraine with bipolar medications. And so there's some relationship there that we don't really understand. But this makes sense. If a gene is defective, it may have more than one effect. It may do one thing in this part of the brain, another thing in a different part of the brain. So this isn't surprising at all. Irritable bowel syndrome is yet another comorbidity that commonly occurs in the context of bipolar disorder. So it's a variety of different things that are associated with illness. Other psychiatric comorbidity or anxiety, panic attacks are clearly elevated in people with bipolar disorder, share some kind of relationship. So the picture of what is what, and in fact the whole issue of whether it's proper to really call it comorbidity, which sort of assumes you have two independent illnesses that are occurring in the same person. Well, I don't really think that's what's happening at all. I think that you have one illness that has these two different manifestations. But that is going to require greater knowledge of the cause of these illnesses in the brain than we currently have. These are, when we talk about dopamine and norepinephrine, these are stress hormones. These are your classic fight and for flight hormones, and so that is your general stress mechanism. So it's clear that these illnesses are affecting stress hormones, and that the stress system is somehow keenly involved. The animal models that we have of depression usually involve stress in one way or another, either continued over time or inescapable. It seems that stress, which you are helpless to do anything about, is the kind of stimulation most likely to cause depression. And boy, I just hate to think about how many of us would say, yeah, that's me right now. I'm stressed and there's nothing I can do about it. That's what makes people depressed. As well as the idea that stress causes release of other hormones in the brain, like cortisol, that actually damages and has a toxic effect on neurons. So as I alluded to before, one of the new theories is that stress releases cortisol, which damages your neurons. Antidepressants turn on BDNF, this hormone BDNF, that in turn literally help your neurons grow back or repair themselves in some way. And that is why the medications take 2 to 4 weeks to work, is that's how long it takes for your, if you will, your brain to grow back. So it's a fascinating relationship.